You've only got yourself a Tribit Stormbox Blast. I mean, wow, that's what we call having a blast of a time. You've messed around with XBass. It's got an XBass button with XBass on. That is a big old boost to the bass, but not so much over the top that you can't listen to it. It's kind of balanced, but yeah, it is very bass heavy. It boosts the bass everywhere, and it gives you a deeper bass extension, which is a problem because when you turn XBass off, it becomes music mode, which is an upper bass slanted tuning. You don't, and the problem is you don't get the deep bass you're going to get with the XBass. We could have done without the boost, but keep it extended. You know what? If only we had an app that did EQ, but hang on a second. Tribit or Tribit, we still don't know. They do an app. It's got custom EQ settings, almost Soundcore-like. So what we want to know is, what can we really do? How can we really tailor this speaker using the app? I'm going to give you, first of all, an overview of the app itself.
The app, of course, will list all your Tribit speakers. Select your Tribit Stormbox Blast. It's the nature of Tribit now. You'll get an XBass mode, a music mode, and an audiobook mode with a little graph showing you the differences between them. You can also click on this icon up here, and that will give you your 2 lighting control modes. Clicking your 3 dots for your options will bring up device info. Firmware updates are done via the screen. And if you click inside the orange box, you get all the EQs set up on the speaker. By default, you'll get a classical mode, a jazz mode, a party mode, and of course XBass mode, default EQ sound, which I don't know why they're not called in music mode. And then clicking again here will bring you to the app's EQ. It is split over 2 screens. However, this is where you can set your own EQ and then remember to save it and name it. They are calling them plus 6 dB, minus 6 dB, but in the real world, they don't equate to 12 decibels of EQ range. We do actually have a 50 Hz slider. It's great to be able to control the deeper bass.
It's looking good. We've got lots of options. Or we can tailor that EQ. We hope we can anyway. Something to bear in mind when you go to a custom EQ, and you're playing lovely, I got it in custom EQ, but oh, actually, maybe I'll try XBass now. I'll turn XBass on, and then I'll go back to custom. No, you'll go back to music mode. So if you're going with a custom mode, know that. If you start using the XBass, you're going to have to go back to the app to get back to your EQ settings. Also, the app is not bad. It's a lot better than when the app first came to Android. A lot of the time, if you're trying to mess around with different EQs, trying to get the EQ just right, and you're going from one to the other, you can never be sure you're in the right EQ. It's a bit buggy. The only way to be sure you're now listening to the custom EQ you set is, for me personally, I found I had to come out of the app, close the app, and restart it, and then go back and then select my custom EQ. It's only when you've been messing with the custom EQ that happens. So once, if you come up with a custom EQ you like, you'll be able to set and forget it as long as you don't start messing around with the buttons or other EQs settings. Again, gonna have to watch. Often you'll put a slider up to a certain level or down to a certain level. You'll save it. It all looks hunky-dory. You go out, you close it down. Next time you go to the app, you open up your EQ settings, you'll find the sliders have moved. There are some levels where it won't stick. You may be at, say, +3. You want to go to +4, and every time you go to +4, it goes back to +3. But you could go to +5 and it will set. But so there's certain levels on each slider where it doesn't seem to want to let you stick with that setting, but you can go above or below without a problem. One reason we wanted to mess around with the EQ, not just because we wanted to tailor the sound, is because on my personal Stormbox Blast, I don't know if it's going to be on other speakers, there is a significant dip down to 3.5 kilohertz, and it's quite wide. It's from like 3 to 6 kilohertz. It's not awful when you're just listening to music. It doesn't strike you as, oh no, there's a 5.5 kilohertz dip. However, it is robbing it of a little bit of detail and sparkle that would be there if that dip wasn't there. And the problem with the EQ is there's no sliders. Would you believe it? There's no sliders covering that area of the. So using their app, you cannot EQ out that particular dip, but you can EQ around it. I have tried to set a custom EQ that I would just listen to indoors that maintains the spirit of this speaker. And the spirit of this speaker is big old bass, a JBL boombox. Maybe it's a draw, not quite killed it, killer. But the spirit of the speaker is about deep bass. My custom EQ, my first custom EQ, is about keeping that bass, but reducing some of the upper bass to reduce some of the over the top punch. Can handle masses of deep bass over the top, but can't really handle too much punch. For me, it's kind of not just the punch, kind of smothering some of the details that we're already having an issue with because of the 3.5 kHz dip. So that's my aim on the first one, just to get something between the music mode and the XBass mode. There is a little bit of sizzle in its tuning because they have EQ'd around that dip. Either side of that dip, they do have peaks, which not particularly does give it a bit of a sizzle. I've tried to smooth that out a little bit, but really I'm just trying to show you what you can do with custom EQ. So these are some frequency response comparisons between music mode, XBass mode, and by the way, I should mention, whatever you do in the app, you cannot get more bass than you'll get with XBass. XBass is the limit of the full-on bass that you can get. Once you go into custom EQ, it turns off XBass. And then if you put the sliders all the way up to max along the bass level, you're only going to start touching where XBass was anyway. So once you go into custom EQ, it's got to be about, well, I didn't quite want that much bass and I'm going to tailor it another way. If you want the maximum bass, it is going to be the XBass button. So these are my frequency response comparisons.
Custom mode, XBass mode, music mode. Custom mode compared to XBass mode. So if we overlay all three, 60% volume, you can see music mode. It has the least bass, but it certainly retains bass, but it rolls off earlier than XBass mode. The big difference between XBass mode and custom mode on these measurements would be pushing 50 Hz in the app does get you a tad more in deep bass. I have kind of made the 5.5 kHz dip slightly shallower, but there's no sliders around this point. You cannot EQ that out using the Tribit app. I've smoothed out the high-end treble peaks, and I put a peak around the 1.6 kHz mark where they have a band for the EQ, preferring that over the peak that they have around 2.5 kHz. You're going to need some peaks whatever you do because of this big dip here, but the takeaway is if you push the bass, you're not really going to get any more than XBass will give you. That's the limit for bass, but using custom mode, I am able to reduce the upper bass somewhat, which for me was a little bit too much indoors. So for me, this has ended up being better indoor listen than either music mode or XBass mode. At maximum volume, as we already saw in previous videos, music mode will go louder, but it's at the cost of the deeper bass. At maximum volume, this peak that they have at the 2.5 kHz mark is quite nasty. So using custom mode, I have shallowed that peak out, and my peak is at the 1.6 kHz mark, and we've got less at the high end. For me, it just makes it a little bit more pleasant on the ears.
Not a massive difference, as you can see, but I'm just trying to show you how you can tailor that sound, but maintaining, the bass heavy nature of what we're buying the speaker for. Because it's not just bass heavy, it is heavy. 5.5 kilos. That's a big old wallop to be picking up. So that's something to bear in mind. This is a comparison between that particular custom EQ and XBass mode.
Hoping that you'll answer, cause I'm going insane. It's quite a long time ago, you brought me out of control. Hungry for your love, and like I know what that might be. From Paris to Berlin, in every disco I get in, my heart is pumping for love. Pumping for love. When I'm thinking of you and all the things we could do, my heart is pumping for love. You left me lonely for you. You left me longing for you. You left me lonely for you. You left me longing for you. Teasing was a thing, and now I just can't let it go. Made a new or something no one else needs to know. I guess I'm thinking of you like I would know what to do if and when I found you, but I don't, I've got no clue. From Paris to Berlin, in every disco I get in, my heart is pumping for love, pumping for love. When I'm thinking of you and all the things we could do, my heart is pumping for love. You left me lonely for you. You left me longing for you. You left me lonely for you. You left me longing for you. You left me lonely for you.
So, in a real world track, as opposed to test tones and pink noise, pushing the 50 Hz slider in the app does not get you more deep bass. Unlike earlier measurements, in the track, I didn't manage to get more in terms of real extra deep bass, but we have reduced the upper bass somewhat between 150 Hz and 300 Hz. I've put a little peak in at 1.6 Hz, and that's still there. And I've reduced the peak that they have nearer 3 kHz, which I find a bit harsh, but nothing you can do about that 5.5 kHz dip if you're sticking with the Tribit app.
Just to reiterate, my custom EQ here is just to show you how you can tailor the sound, albeit maybe it's a little bit in a subtle way. The other thing to note is it is a bass-heavy speaker, but you can tame that bass. And even with my custom EQ, if you just bring those 100 Hz, 50 Hz sliders down without touching anything else along that graphic equaliser, it automatically makes the sound clearer. And that's pretty much, you know, how frequency of music works. Big old boosts anywhere, any particular peaks can smother other parts of that track to your ears, even though you haven't even touched those places. So that it's about how the whole track gels, and that's why I personally always talk about a balance within the frequency response rather than any particular element of the frequency response. It's much more complicated than simply picking out a particular area and then saying that's good or bad and there's an issue with it. So we've tamed it a little bit. Why don't we compare it against some other speakers? One of the speakers you've asked me about that kind of surprised me, because it's not really, I never said this was a party speaker. That's clearly a party speaker, but you can do some semi-serious listening on this. And by the way, I've been enjoying this more and more while I've been listening to it. I want to just point that out, unlike some speakers. So yes, it's still a big major thumbs up from me on the Stormbox Blast. I'm not saying it's the holy grail yet. We still haven't got there. And it has major issues, clearly. But as an all-rounder, for the money, for what it delivers, it's a good all-round option if you particularly have a taste for heavy bass. This doesn't do heavy bass, but surprisingly for WKing, what it does do, it gives you a nice refined sound. And why I like this particularly is because it does proper left and right on those woofers, and you can turn it around and have it like a normal left-right speaker rather than in party mode, in portrait mode, we would say, like that, where you're not really getting the left-right separation. So you can't, but it doesn't do deep bass. But you've asked about it. Would be interesting to hear it against my kind of tamed EQ, but a bass-heavy speaker, you know, still maintaining the spirit of this speaker against the WKing T9.
You need to hold this feeling near and close. I know it's dark, but we'll never fall apart. Feel the atmosphere, wipe away your tears. Just let the music play.
So the T9 can do a decent job. It just can't match the deep bass or even the mid bass of the Stormbox Blast. Mids are really nice and accurate till you get to 1 kilohertz. You get a bit of a dip then till about 2.5 kilohertz, and then another dip between 3.5 kilohertz and 6 kilohertz, kind of similar to the Blast, but not as bad. Then a big peak, 8 kilohertz. But what it can't do is match the bass that the Stormbox Blast can give out. Big, full, round, deep bass. The T9 cannot do that.
As I said, this is a bass-heavy speaker, a deep bass-heavy speaker. This isn't. This can, surprisingly, with WKing, play some nice, refined music, but you just don't play your bass-heavy music on it. But if you want a delicate listen, it was a surprise to me. This can be quite detailed, big and open, almost hi-fi-like. Was a shocker. And it's not something I really talk about because what does it compare to? It's really much almost out on its own in those terms. But against this bass-heavy monster, you know, it's night and day. If you're going to play tracks where bass is important or you like to really hear your bass, you're going to pick the Blast over the T9. However, if you do not play bass-heavy music, I would go with the T9. Outside of the bass, 300 hertz and above, I think it's doing a better job. It's just that it will never give you the satisfying bass that the Blast can do. And for me, a deep bass rather than upper bass, punchy bass, a deep bass is the foundation for everything else that comes. You lose so much, even in terms of the imaging. I know we talk about bass as not being directional, but it does lend a lot to the imaging. It's kind of like a foundation for it. You're going to lose that without that bass. But if you do not like bass or your tracks are not bass focused, I think the T9 is a better listen, and I really like putting it on its edge, on the side like that, and in its indoor mode. I've got another speaker on this table. I don't know if you spotted it. Now, this is an interesting one because in terms of price, it ain't cheap. About 367 quid, about $500. It's about the price of a JBL boombox too. To me, that's ridiculous. However, the Vifa Oslo is one of those speakers, I won't say cult-like, it's a bit more mainstream than that. It's been around a long time, 6 years. We think of as a bass-heavy speaker. So that's why I think it's an interesting comparison. It is a speaker you still talk about. Some people tell me it's the best speaker they've ever heard. I'm not saying that's, for me, the case. It's a nice speaker, but it has its issues. However, it's one you talk about. It's probably interesting because here's a £200 speaker. There's a £400-ish getting on speaker that is said to be bass heavy. With my custom EQ against the Oslo, how do they compare?
Trying when you live in black and white. I can take one more lie. Never thought someone could have so much to hide. We were so close, where did the love go? Lost on desire. Now we tiptoe into the unknown, walking all night on thin ice. All night on thin ice. Tug of war, we tiptoe into the unknown. We were so close, where did the love go? Lost on desire. Now we tiptoe into the unknown, walking all night on thin ice.
Custom EQ on the Stormbox Blast. It is bass heavy. It's just not as bass heavy as the XBass mode. But that's what this speaker's all about. If you're going to tune it, I think still tune it with a bass boost. And then its biggest issue is its dip, 3 kilohertz to about 6.5 kilohertz, centered on around 5.5 kilohertz. It's robbing it of a lot of clarity, a lot of life. Although when actually listening, it's not as bad as it looks on a chart. Quite a contrast with the Vifa Oslo that is capable of doing deep bass, even a little bit of rumbly bass. But overall, its mid and upper bass is recessed, and then it has a very bright end, 2 kHz and above. So when it's against something bass heavy like the Stormbox Blast, it's coming off as a bit thin.
I mean, it's not night and day. It's like different seasons. It's like winter to summer. A speaker we talk about as being bass heavy, and I'm not sure I completely agree with that. It's bass heavy, but in certain areas, but it's completely anemic. Yes, this is overdone and overblown. So I know what's going on. There's people, oh, do you see what he did? I don't know what he's doing. Because you're going to say, this is a hi-fi. This is the audiophiles kind of sound. And I know why. Because it is crispy clear. And a lot of people are kind of just tuned to that kind of sound, that crispiness, breathiness, kind of. It's almost like vocals have, you're seeing the air frost because it's so breathy. It's that kind of feel, along with underpinning it with a deep bass. But it's missing a lot of other elements. It's missing some of the lower mids and some of the upper bass and mid bass. The shape of the bass is not right for me. That's why it doesn't have a full sound. But yes, it can have a serious deep wallop because the lower end is still prominent. So you're saying, yeah, well, yeah, if you listen to the original, it would sound so much better. And so here's the thing. I'm going to do a neutral EQ, which we can do in the app because you can set multiple EQs. So if I set it what I call a neutral EQ, I'm actually pushing the 50 Hz slider up 1, but I'm doing that because the 100 Hz slider is coming down by 6. So I'm taking the 100 Hz down from +3 to -3. The 400 Hz gets a push from +2 to +3. 800 Hz goes from -1 to 0. So reshaping it, that's to make it sort of as far as we can in line with the original track because we've got that 3.5 kilohertz dip we can do nothing about if we stick to the app. And I'm all about sticking to the app because once you start going with third party, first of all, I have my opinions on that, whether it sounds good to my ears or not. However, once we go outside of the app and you start, first of all, it's dangerous, start pushing peaks. So you can't safely use a third party app without losing volume because you're going to have some safe headroom. But of course, if you're not really worried about knackering your speaker, you push all the peaks as much as you want. However, you've got unlimited options. I couldn't start doing that for every speaker. So I'm only sticking with EQ when it's embedded into firmware, and hopefully it's not layered EQ. It could still be layered EQ, but however, for embedded into the firmware, it sticks with the speaker no matter what device you're playing from and makes a significant difference, which it does with the Tribit Stormbox Blast. So you said, I know, I heard you. A lot of people say, yes, but if you heard it against another neutral speaker, you'd hear what it can really do. Let's hear the differences then. Neutral EQ, Vifa Oslo, same track.
Pointless fights. No use trying when you live in black and white. I can take one more lie. Never thought someone could have so much to hide. We were so close, where did the love go? Lost on desire, desire. Now we tiptoe into the unknown, walking all night on thin ice. Now we tiptoe into the unknown, walking all night on thin ice.
So neutral mode. Stormbox Blast is not far off the original track. Its biggest issue is its dip, 3 kHz to 6 kHz. And while it can cover it quite well in the real world, it is of course robbing it of clarity that would add to detail in the actual track when certainly compared against the original track. So even in its neutral mode, it's still more bass heavy and more full and satisfying in the bass than the Vifa Oslo. But the Vifa Oslo will be better for clarity. It doesn't have the dip of the Stormbox Blast, and it does extend well into the highs.
Here's the thing. It's thought of as being an audiophile speaker. I can only tell you on my Vifa Oslo, it's not a neutral tuning. It's a very crispy, clear tuning. And I know a lot of people take that as being hi-fi and neutral, but it really isn't. There's an upward slant and not even a level slant. And really in an audiophile world, you want a bit of a downward slope. It isn't. It's a bright sounding speaker. That is not a neutral sounding speaker. It has a lovely deep bass, but it's on the bright side. A little bit too bright for me, but with the right tracks and with vocals in particular that just come out from the speaker. I say come out from the speaker. Bear in mind, much like the Viva Helsinki, which I had, because of the price, well overpriced in my opinion, because they are it sounds the size of the speaker. It doesn't really explode from the speaker itself. To me, I call that a bit boxy. So I don't mean boxy as in, oh, it's got a hollow sound, but boxy as in can't leave the confines of the speaker. However, in terms of vocals, they do really, really project because of its tuning. And that is probably the strong point, along with still being able to underpin it with a bass. But it's not mine. The tuning on mine is not neutral, but it's kind of hi-fi-ish like, and I know why people think that. But the bass that this can produce, the fuller bass, the more rounded, right from the upper mids and deep bass, far more satisfying than Vifa Oslo. Yes, it doesn't have the clarity of that. We should experiment maybe with third party just on this one speaker to see what a difference that 3.5 kilohertz dip is making to its clarity. But that's where it's losing out, even lost out really in terms of clarity to the T9. This is about bass, but having a safe sound all round. It will never sound terrible. In fact, it sounds okay. It's only in the ABs you really hear what that 3.5 kilohertz dip is robbing it of in terms of the detail and the sparkle. But even in a neutral setting, not overblown bass, that's a decent bass. I think it beats the Vifa Oslo. You're probably saying you still don't really talk about against the original. Just for you, because I know I can hear you talking. Let's do both of these speakers against the original track.
Pointless fights, no use trying when you live in black and white. I can take one more lie. Never thought someone could have so much to hide. We were so close, where did the love go? Lost on desire. Now we tiptoe into the unknown, walking all night on thin ice. All night on thin ice. To hide. We were so close, where did the love go? Lost on desire. Now we tiptoe into the unknown, walking all night on thin ice.
It's going to depend what part of that track is most important to you to Thank you. It's going to depend on what part of that track is most important for you to reproduce. If it's about clear highs and the vocals standing out, yeah, the Oslo takes it. But for me, where bass is important, especially a deep, warm bass, it's only the Blast that can get, of only the speakers on this table, that can do it justice. Got deep bass, but it's a bit disjointed. The deep bass is kind of scooped out because the mids, some of the upper bass is missing, even the lower mids. So that's a nice speaker. But for me, it's not an all-rounder because it's too bright, slightly hard-edged. With the right tracks, fantastic. But this is more of an all-rounder. However, if it's about detail, yeah, the Oslo takes it. This isn't a hi-fi speaker. That's nearer what you're going to call hi-fi tuning, but still, to me, it's not hi-fi. However, you will get that crispy clarity that you will probably like if you think of yourself as liking a neutral sound that you're not going to get from here because the details and it can't do all things to all people. Just to mention, we've got interesting woofer front and back, but the two tweeters are on the front. You're getting the sense of left and right, but it's not a big old sound stage. This is bigger, and just listening to them side by side through several tracks, multi-genres, it's just overall more satisfying. But yeah, you can clearly pick out certain tracks where that will do a better job. But hey, you still got the T9. Do not discount the T9. If you just like, if you a neutral listen, if you like hearing your details and a nice open airy, and it's not really that airy, this is more airy, but it's not going to be quite as clear as the Vifa Oslo. But this is the point, 400 quid, about $500, about £200, something like 115 quid when I last checked. And that's the problem for me, and that's why where I judge all these speakers, at their price level, against other rivals, what they can do. If that's £200, that's a whole different ballgame, but it's not 200 quid. That's a £400 speaker. I don't think it delivers for some people. It's going to deliver. It's very much like the Dali Catch. Again, audio files. You don't know it took me. Trying real music and blah, blah. And that's the thing. When they talk about real music, so they're talking about maybe just some acoustics or one or two instruments playing. It's not complex. We're not talking EDM. We're not talking massive things going on all along the frequency response. And then you will get a different result. But I'm testing speakers, and I think for most people, that's probably not what you're going to listen to most of the time. And I believe what they do when you're playing something complex is really, really important, as opposed to when there's just one or two instruments playing, maybe with some vocals over it as well. Yes, then it's going to be a little bit different. But, you know, with bass-heavy tracks, with complex tracks, I think my result is more indicative. Is that right? It's a better indicator of what you're going to find. But always remember, it's about your own end scenario, your own ears and your own room. It could be quite different. I hope you just get enough information that you can tailor that information to your usage scenario. So, of course, if you're playing real instruments, depending on, if it's a drum kit, I'm still going to play it with the Stormbox Blast. Anything with the bass, a stand-up bass, I'm going to play it on there rather than there because the bass is disjointed on there, although it can be satisfying. So that's pretty much the roundup. It was really about showing you what you can do in the EQ. It's going to be all about to your taste. So we've got a neutral EQ there. We've got an EQ that's in between XBass and music mode, just reduces some of the punch. And so if that's reducing too much bass, just go to XBass. Just remember, XBass is the limit for how much bass you can get. And I know you want outdoor tuning. Again, just know, push the upper bass a bit more, push the highs a bit more, make it more V-shaped for outdoors. It's going to work. Depending on, again, your usage scenario. It's just that normally with your outdoors, there's a lot more background noise, a lot more going around. You're probably not just sitting directly in front, and you're probably further away. You're doing all sorts of things, but I've got to guess at what your scenario is. And in those cases, it's just about cutting through that background noise. And for, obviously, the frequency, the sound pressure level drops off with distance. So you want those the parts of the frequency that are going to cut through that distance and still be there. Maybe chuck away some of the bits you don't need so the amp can deliver where you can get the volume from. That's pretty much a wrap. It is a move forward. We've got the custom EQ, the Tribit have come out with their app. It does give us more flexibility. It adds to a dollop of flexibility with the Tribit Stormbox Blast. The speaker I'm liking more the more I listen to it. Just know it's not audiophile heaven, but it's a really, really good all-rounder. Bear in mind, you've got a heavyweight. Well, I'm saying bear in mind, should we quickly go over the specs? We normally do it. I probably already too long for a speak for, well, 20 seconds. All right, really, really quickly, because it's supposed to be just about EQ, and I know we're already massively long, but just to tell you, you never would have guessed, they're all made in China. We talked about the prices. In terms of the battery, we've got a 71 watt-hour battery, which is great on the Tribit Stormbox Blast, 44.4 watt-hours for the T9, and a reasonable 37.4 watt-hours for the Oslo. The Oslo is aptX, by the way, where the other two are SBC, but it's only Bluetooth 4 versus Bluetooth 5.3 and Bluetooth 5. We do have NFC on the Vifa Oslo, but the Vifa Oslo does not do stereo pairing, and the other two will do stereo pairing. Only the T9 has USB-C charging, whereas that's an actual mains lead, and it's a barrel charger for the Vifa Oslo. They all have auxiliary inputs. Woo, 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 woo. Can all be used as a power bank except for the Vifa Oslo. Only the T9 has a card slot, a micro SD, so you can play your music straight off the device itself. Only the Tribit Stormbox, well, I said that, no, my specs are wrong, because I know we've got lights there, and indeed, we've got lights on the T9, but we've got no lights on the £400 Vifa Oslo. We've got lights, I'm not lying to you. You probably think so. There indeed are our lights. Have I just turned them off? Come back on. Well, they were there, and now they're gone. Oh, and they're back again. That does have lights. We don't know what the power rating is for the Oslo, but that's okay. We don't take much notice of that anymore. They say 90 watts versus 80 watts. 3.7 kilos for the T9, 5.5 kilos for the Stormbox Blast, 2.4 for the Vifa Oslo. Only the Tribit Stormbox is IPX7, and indeed, not only can you drop it in 1 meter of water for 30 minutes, it will float, and it will float with the drivers up. That's brilliant. It's got 107mm woofers, 230mm. I think I'm doing it through the grill, but don't quote me on that. 230mm tweeters, 2 passive radiators versus on the Oslo, 2 65mm front and back woofers and 2 50mm. I call them tweeters. They're not tweeters. They are full range driver. 2 full range 50mm drivers, and 2 passive radiators which are on the side. We've got 100mm drivers, woofers on the T9, and again 30mm tweeters. In terms of those auxiliary inputs, which they all have, very good, almost no latency. I'm saying because obviously within margin of error, plus or minus 17 milliseconds, I'm saying within that margin of error, no latency on the Blast. However, 33 milliseconds is okay, but obviously we really want no latency on the auxiliary input. And really not good at all at 66 milliseconds for the T9. 150 milliseconds streaming is really, really bad. 83 milliseconds is just about okay streaming for over Bluetooth for the Blast. And 166 milliseconds, not good at all for the Oslo. No app. I think they did have an app. Now they don't. They got bought out. No app for the WKing, but we do have an app for the Stormbox Blast. That was what this video is all about. So despite probably 90% of it not being about the EQ, that's what the video was about. Thank you for watching, and I really hope I see you in my next video. Thank you for watching.
I ain't about that life. I ain't about that life. Ain't no project wife, got my logic right, cause I'm not your type. I ain't about that life. I ain't about that life. Sorry, ma, I ain't get it right. I'ma just live my life. I ain't about that. I ain't about that life.